plastic surgeon who gave his patients new hope and confidence.
He had a great reputation. There are a number of plastic surgeons in the area, and I would certainly say he is in the top 10%.
He was a good doctor and friendly. You could just tell when you met him that he wanted to help you.
But tragedy suddenly strikes when this revered doctor is viciously murdered at his own practice.
Our whole building was surrounded by police officers. We didn't know what was going on.
I saw blood splatter on the floor and some blood splatter on the wall.
It was a very brazen crime. Somebody came in broad daylight.
It was just very surreal. How can that happen in his own office?
As homicide investigators begin to dig in, they uncover a life riddled with deep wounds that never healed.
She was, in her mind, horribly disfigured.
It was very clear from her demeanor that she was not stable.
She was just angry at so many people.
And that was the beginning of this thing, which just went from bad to worse.
She wasn't insane. She was just evil.
July 3rd, 1997, Petaluma, California. At 8 a.m., business owners and their employees begin arriving at the medical complex on Lynch Creek Way.
It was a Thursday morning. We started our day. We work at a physical therapy facility, so we had patients coming in, and me and two other therapists heard some popping noises. This was July 3rd, so we just assumed it was firecrackers. We didn't really think anything of it.
Minutes later, Petaluma police receive a frantic 911 call from a woman named Deborah Tavis. She says there has been a shooting in her husband's office.
Dr. Mike Tavis ran a plastic surgery office. He worked with his wife, Deborah Tavis, and their building was right next door to our physical therapy facility.
When a potential shots fired call happens in Petaluma, it's not ordinary. So typically, all available officers will respond to that area.
The police arrive at these medical offices, and they come with full cavalry, so to speak.
Are surrounded by police officers. We didn't know what was going on.
According to Deborah Tavis, there are at least two people inside. Her husband, 53-year-old Dr. Michael Tavis, and his office manager, 59-year-old Kay Carter.
Officers could tell from talking to her that she was scared, that she was frantic about her husband's safety because her husband had not exited the building. Based on the circumstances, the decision was made to enter the building.
We have to be careful. We don't know if there's still a shooter in the building. Two things we're doing is looking for the injured, and we're looking for the suspect.
As the team entered the rear of the building, you enter a kitchen area and then you make a turn down a hallway. And as I came around the corner, I immediately saw feet and the parts of a man's legs laying on the ground. I saw blood splatter on the floor and some blood splatter on the wall, and I immediately called out to the rest of the team that I had somebody down.
They found two people laying on the floor. They were almost right next to each other.
We immediately could identify Dr. Tavis and Kay Carter laying on the ground because there was a picture of them in the reception area with Deborah as the group that worked in the office.
The scene is violent, but there is still hope that the injuries, while life-threatening, are not yet fatal.
This office manager, Kay Carter, appeared to have sustained a single gunshot wound to the head. She was not moving, but she was making sound, moaning. Dr. Tavis was laying on his back with multiple gunshot wounds.
Outside, police speak with Deborah Tavis to piece together how the tragic scene unfolded.
When we first come into contact with Deborah at the scene, she's clearly distraught. She's clearly upset.
Deborah tells police she and her husband arrived late for an appointment with a patient.
Deborah Tavis and her husband arrived at the back door and went inside.
and Deborah Davis stopped in the back there to apply her makeup while her husband went towards the front. And she then heard a conversation between her husband, between Dr. Michael Davis and a woman.
The last thing that she heard was the voice of her husband, and then she heard shots from within that office.
She became frightened, and the gunfire stopped and ran out of the building.
Deborah was in great fear for her safety and the safety of her husband. She ran next door to another office. She called 911.
Inside, police and paramedics desperately
entered the building the minute we told them that we had cleared it and that we needed help. The paramedics transported Kay Carter to Memorial Hospital, and they pronounced Dr. Tavis dead at the scene.
Michael James Tavis was born on April 14, 1944 in Los Angeles County, California. He grew up in the city of Orange and attended Orange High School, where he played football, ran track, and loved racing. His classmates nicknamed him Racer Brown.
He graduated from high school down there, and he was kind of trying to find his way like any young man does. His uncle had a club up in South Tahoe. He went up there and worked parking cars for a while. And then at some point, he decided he wanted to become a doctor. He went to school at UCLA.
Michael became a licensed physician in 1975 and built up a private practice as a reconstructive surgeon. In 1978, he also started a family.
Michael Tavis married a well-respected attorney in Sonoma County, and they were kind of a power couple.
The couple had 2 children and settled on a ranch in Petaluma. For a while, they seemed to have it all. But the marriage didn't last. The couple divorced in 1995, and Michael had to readjust to life as a single man.
I know that he wanted to be an artist in his other life. He liked to do still painting. He enrolled in a pottery class, and he happened to meet this woman who would become his future wife.
When Michael met Deborah Siegmund, he knew he had found the woman of his dreams.
Deborah was recently divorced and raising a child of her own. Deborah was extremely outgoing and exuberant, good looking, and she loved him, and they were happy.
They had been married in Paris with a kind of a lavish ceremony.
After their wedding in 1996, Michael and Deborah Tavis formed a powerful partnership back in California.
Dr. Tavis ran that office with his wife, Deborah, and they worked together there.
Deborah's job in the office was best categorized as a consultant. She would oftentimes consult with Dr. Tavis's patients to discuss aftercare, psychological effects of plastic surgery, the reasons to have it and to not have it.
With Deborah by his side, and in a decade where plastic surgery was becoming all the rage, Michael's business flourished.
He did abdominoplasties, liposuction, facelifts, surgeons in the area. And I would certainly say he is in the top 10%.
He was a good doctor and friendly. You could just tell when you met him that he wanted to help you. It wasn't just like, sign here, pay the money, I'm done. And also his wife, Deborah, was extremely nice.
He had a steady, growing clientele, and he also lived in a very nice home. There was a big swimming pool, so he had all the accoutrements of a comfortable lifestyle.
In the summer of 1997, the newlyweds were thriving.
They seemed to get along quite well, very playful, very collegial, and respectful. I think that he really valued her judgment and her participation with his patients.
But on July 3rd, 1997, the couple's successful practice has become the scene of a violent attack. Dr. Michael Tavis has been pronounced dead on the scene, and office manager Kay Carter is left fighting for her life.
We were able to immediately determine that this was not a murder-suicide because there was no weapon. The weapon that was used to shoot Kay Carter and kill Dr. Tavis left the scene with the suspect.
As Kay Carter is rushed to an area hospital, police lock down the surrounding area in search of the shooter.
It was a very brazen crime. Somebody came in broad daylight, so this received some media attention.
Next thing you know, there's a helicopter overhead. We're getting all these phone calls. People are calling to tell us what's going on, that someone was at large.
They basically told everybody to stay inside. So it was really a tense situation of not knowing exactly what they were dealing with and whether that person who had done this was still armed and dangerous.
Coming up, as detectives race to find a killer, Deborah Tavis reveals a short list of dissatisfied clients.
Deborah provided 5 names of recent patients that were angry with Dr. Tavis.
She heard her husband say, "I'm sorry, I care," and then the gunfire erupted.
And police find a piece of evidence that suggests this is only the beginning.
It definitely gives you the idea that this notebook that she was carrying was the hit list.
They didn't know if someone was just going around shooting doctors.
July 3rd, 1997. Police, after a shooting, claimed the life of 53-year-old plastic surgeon Michael Tavis.
Dr. Tavis has been murdered in his Petaluma office, and his office assistant, Kay Carter, has been transported to Memorial Hospital, gravely injured.
We were all just very nervous. None of us, patients or employees, were allowed to leave. It was hard to believe that it was Dr. Tavis who was murdered, because he was such a well-liked doctor. It was just very surreal. How can that happen at his own office?
With the assailant still at large, lead investigator Danny Fish assigns officers to search the area, knowing every second counts.
We went from office to office. They were either closed and locked up completely and secured, or the owners of the businesses were there and were able to easily tell us, no, nobody's coming here. The area where the doctor's office complex is called Lynch Creek because there's a small creek that runs parallel to the office complex near the parking lot. So if somebody was to perhaps discard a weapon, that would be a logical place for somebody to throw a gun. It would also be a logical place for somebody to hide. We did assign officers to check the entire creek pathway. We were unsuccessful in locating any weapons, and we were not successful in really gathering any kind of investigative leads during the time that we were checking out the creek area.
We are getting with potential witnesses and other offices, people who may have passed by, people arriving to work. All those folks had to be interviewed to see if they saw anything unusual, if they heard anything unusual, any information that will lead us to a suspect.
Inside the office of Dr. Michael Tavis, homicide investigators survey the crime scene.
We did not find any signs of a struggle anywhere. For instance, we didn't find any chairs knocked over in the waiting room that would indicate maybe a scuffle had occurred.
There was no sign of forced entry, no pry marks on the door, nothing unusual there.
Detective Fish and his colleagues theorize the shooter likely entered the rear employee entrance and that Kay Carter was shot first.
Kay Carter was found near her desk. She was just shot in the face very deliberately in a very brazen way.
Based on the blood spatter evidence that we could see at the time, it was readily apparent that Dr. Tavis was confronted somewhere in the hallway. Dr. Tavis was shot one time in the chest and then one time in the side as he turned to run, and as he ran towards the waiting room area, shot 2 more times.
Injuries suggest he may have been the primary target.
In my opinion, shooting Kay Carter one time in the head and then shooting Dr. Tavis 4 times would be more of the emotional type of reaction to a person who really wanted Dr. Tavis dead.
He had pointed to the fact that this was not a random occurrence, so it certainly narrowed the list of possible motives and suspects.
Investigators circle back to the victim's wife, Deborah Tavis, to get more insight.
Deborah said they had an 8:30 appointment on the books, but it had been unconfirmed, and so they were not sure if that patient was showing up or had shown up, and because they were running late, they were trying to reach Kay Carter to find out if that patient was in fact coming to the appointment or whether that patient had arrived at the appointment.
Deborah says when they finally arrived at the office, that Dr. Tavis walked towards the reception area while she stayed in the back to apply her makeup. There was no indication of anything amiss until she heard a voice speaking to her husband.
At first, Deborah believed that Dr. Tavis was probably talking to Kay Carter, but then when she listened more closely, it sounded like a voice that she didn't recognize.
She described the woman's voice as very calm, controlled, deliberate, and she heard the woman say, "I've seen 28 surgeons," or words to that effect. She heard her husband say, "I'm sorry, I care," and then the gunfire erupted.
Detectives pressed Deborah for anybody she could think of who might have wanted her husband dead.
She was able to recall that there had been a number of patients who were unhappy with the surgical procedures that they had received from Dr. Tavis.
Dr. Tavis had, I think, about a dozen lawsuits over perhaps the same amount of years that involved patients.
She gave it some thought and she's like, these are the top 5 people that were really the angriest about things that I can think of. Our very next step is to identify who these 5 people are, do a background investigation on all of them, find out where they live, what their issue is. At this particular point, Deborah is not a suspect. She was legitimately distraught. She was legitimately frantic. She was what you see in a victim who has just had a traumatic thing happen and is trying to grapple with the aftermath.
With a list of names to follow up on, police release Deborah and shift gears to secure the scene.
We interviewed as many of the occupants of the offices in this office complex as possible.
Investigators get a new lead when they speak to a witness in a neighboring building.
One of our officers was able to contact the witness who observed a small pickup truck backed into a parking stall facing the rear of Dr. Tavis's office on the morning of July 3rd.
I arrived at work and I saw a woman in a truck, and I thought it was odd because usually no one's back there at that time. Something just struck me really strange about her because exactly a week before, I had left for my lunch break at about 1 o'clock and came back and she was in the parking lot. But what was really strange was by the end of the day at 5 o'clock, she was still there, same position, just staring out at our building. 1 week later, the day of the shooting, I get there early in the morning and here she is again.
Coming up, key details about Dr. Tavis's life come to light.
Dr. Tavis had at one point considered a restraining order.
And detectives discover the secret life of a potential serial killer.
She had taken great care to know exactly what these potential victims were doing with their lives.
July 3rd, 1997. Petaluma police officers continue canvassing the office complex where Dr. Michael Tavis was shot and killed. And investigators have a list of disgruntled patients that may lead to a suspect.
Any doctor who's performing cosmetic surgery is probably going to have dissatisfied clients. Not every medical procedure of any kind works out 100% perfect every time. And if it doesn't work out, they could be upset.
Detectives wrap up their last interviews with potential witnesses, including Deborah Soika, who had been trapped in a neighboring office building since the police arrived.
When we were finally allowed to leave that day, I noticed as we were leaving and entering the parking lot that they had the crime scene tape up, and it was blocking my car in. And if I parked in the normal spot where I would usually park, I could have left. And I was kind of kicking myself, thinking, oh, geez, why did I park in this different spot? I just want to go home. And then it dawned on me that that woman was there that morning. That
the person sitting in it would be looking basically directly at the entry point where Dr. Tavis and Deborah typically entered and exited for their workday.
I recall telling the police that she had brown hair and could see this round face through the windshield, but I really couldn't get any details or any good description.
Soon after their interview with Deborah Soika, investigators receive an update on the status of the second victim of the shooting, Dr. Tavis's 59-year-old office manager, Kay Carter.
Kay Carter was treated at the hospital and she never regained her speech. She had traumatic brain injury.
As Kay endures the fight of her life, Detective Fish and his team focus on their list of potential suspects provided by Deborah Tavis.
Our investigators began working actively to follow up on them to see if there was anything unusual in their behavior. Did they have criminal arrest records? Had they made prior threats? And so they began working on each of these people as potential suspects.
Just by knowing their names, we were able to put detectives and officers on the task of locating each and every one of them for an interview. We asked them if they even know that Dr. Tavis has been murdered, find out what their relationship was, and in some cases, perhaps even eliminate them as being suspects. And we were able to do that with 4 of the 5 names because they had legitimate alibis. There was a 5th that we had not been able to contact yet, and that particular name was Theresa Ramirez.
Officers did go to the home of Theresa Ramirez. She was not at home when they arrived. They left a message for her to contact them. She did not. That caused them some concern, so she became somewhat of a focus at that point.
Theresa Mary Ramirez was born in San Francisco on February 8, 1952. The oldest of 3 children of a fireman and a homemaker, she grew up to be a strong-willed, independent woman.
Theresa was a little tiny thing, very outspoken. She'd tell you what you thought, never smoked, drank, swore, or anything. Just a pleasant person.
She got her nursing degree. She had been working at the Kaiser Hospital in Santa Rosa for a number of years.
Terry opened up the orthopedic department in 1985, I believe, when she started working there. So she was one of the originals.
Theresa and I attended the same college in San Francisco. She never talked about any relationships, any kids, any part of herself to us.
I never knew Theresa to be friendly in the way of interacting with other coworkers and colleagues. I worked there probably down the hall from her for 10 years, and I really didn't know a whole lot about her.
I've heard that when Theresa was in South San Francisco, her dad had fixed her up with another fireman. That was supposed to be a good relationship and all, but evidently it fell apart. It devastated her, so she never got into another relationship.
In 1988, Theresa's solitary life was turned upside down when she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
She had a relatively minor finding on one of her breasts, and there was going to be some minor surgery performed in that regard, certainly not a mastectomy, maybe a lumpectomy or some other relatively minor version of it.
She had had several members of her family that had come down with cancer, some that had died from it, and so she was very concerned that she would also have the same fate.
She volunteered and elected to have a bilateral or a double mastectomy.
Being a nurse, she knew, this is, life-threatening, so she decided, to have them both taken off. And after that, it's when everything started going south.
According to Deborah Tavis, her husband performed reconstructive surgery on Theresa.
She went to Dr. Tavis because she wanted to have silicone implants so she'd have matching pair of breasts. Dr. Tavis, in his medical notes, he said that the results were excellent and that Theresa Ramirez was ecstatic with the results, but that proved to be overly optimistic because within a week she was complaining about the surgery and wanted more.
She was unhappy. She felt like that they weren't even, and she ultimately ended up complaining to Dr. Tavis multiple times and had multiple surgeries to try to correct these flaws.
I believe she had a half dozen in all. Dr. Tavis had at one point considered a restraining order, and there's always a question of whether a restraining order can really protect someone against someone who really wants to do them harm.
She did have some anger issues and some passive-aggressive issues.
Theresa was just grunted about everything.
When I found out that she had had so many reconstructive surgeries, I was just, kind of blown away. She wasn't somebody that wore sexy outfits. She wore her closed-in clothes, and so it surprised me that she was so fixated on reconstruction.
Under surveillance. We did watch it for a full 24-hour period all through the night to see if anybody came or went, and nobody did. The fact that she had not come back to her house on any of the days or answered any of our attempts at contact made us concerned that she may have fled.
Coming up, an urgent tip launches the case into high gear.
This is a life-threatening situation.
And an unnerving discovery shakes the entire community.
They found 2 guns in her purse and also a small notebook with names of people.
It was pretty obvious that I was her first target. I was numero uno on her list.
Investigators have identified Theresa Ramirez as their primary lead in the July 3rd murder of Dr. Michael Tavis and the attempted murder of his office manager, Kay Carter, who is left unable to speak. But so far, Theresa has eluded authorities.
On July 7th, I was in my office going over all of the notes on this case, and I received a call from the San Francisco Police Department. They put me in touch with an officer who said, hey, I might have something here to help you with your case.
A woman had checked into a hotel in San Francisco. The hotel staff went into the room, and the woman in the room was passed out.
Paramedics were called, and police were called as well, and she was taken to the hospital.
It's at the hospital where they learn the woman has a pre-existing condition.
This is a life-threatening situation. She was a diabetic, and she was in a diabetic coma.
Hotel records indicate that the woman checked into the hotel at 5 p.m. on July 3rd, hours after Michael Tavis was murdered under the name Theresa Brew.
Police officers arrived at the hotel, and they were able to look around the hotel room to try to find the person's identity. And in doing so, police officers located her identification.
But the name on the driver's license isn't Theresa Brew, it's Theresa Ramirez.
The officers who had responded to the hotel took items of evidence that they had collected at her hotel room.
When police examined the items at the station, a disturbing picture begins to emerge.
She was carrying $5,000 in cash. People who were, quote, on the run. So in her belongings was a train ticket to Van Nuys, California.
They found 2 guns in her purse and also a small notebook with names of people, including the name of Dr. Tavis.
The San Francisco Police Department provided us with the items that they had gathered from the hotel room, including her identification, the guns, cash, and the booklet that had Dr. Tavis's name in it. And we then made arrangements to go to the hospital to try to interview Theresa Ramirez.
Petaluma investigators make the 40-mile drive to San Francisco. And with Theresa Ramirez in a diabetic coma, they prioritize looking at the evidence found in her hotel room, starting with the notebook.
Each page has personal identifying information about a number of people, including Dr. Tavis, his address, his office address, his wife's name, Kay Carter's address, her license plate number, the name of multiple other doctors that she has had contact with in the past. It definitely gives you the idea that this notebook that she was carrying was a hit list type notebook of the people that she means harm to.
There were about 20 names. It's definitely a big development, a huge significance for her to have this notebook there in her own handwriting.
As I'm looking at the notebook, I am definitely solid in my belief that we have the right person identified as the suspect. And I am also flabbergasted and relieved to know that she wasn't able to carry out what I think she was planning to carry out.
One of the names in Theresa's notebook is Dr. Robert Fees, who was tasked with approving Theresa's requests for further surgeries through her insurance provider.
She had a very unfortunate history of surgeries. As a medical director, I was required to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I asked her to come in. She came in rather tense, nervous, and sat down abruptly. She fidgeted and her eyes darted all over the room. I explained to her why I asked her to see a psychiatrist, that I was concerned that she had been having poor results, and I wanted to get clearance that she would be a good patient for future surgery. And what happened was, she looked at me and glared and said, "I'll show you why," and put her hands on her blouse and made the motion as if she was going to rip open her blouse. So I told her, "Theresa, that's not appropriate," because she just glared at me.
When investigators contact Dr. Fees, he explains that Theresa was unlike any patient he'd ever encountered, especially once he decided she needed a psychiatric evaluation.
She had been operated on by multiple surgeons, most of whom refused to do more than one operation because they found her too difficult. And one particular surgeon, Dr. Michael Tavis, who was a very generous and compassionate service, kept giving in to her requests.
Dr. Fees says he denied Theresa's request for further surgery, but she refused to leave the room.
I picked up the phone and I asked for our security to come in and have her leave the building. It was very clear, obviously from her demeanor, that she was not stable.
Unbeknownst to Dr. Fees, the most disturbing visit came on the morning of July 3rd.
We determined that Theresa Ramirez showed up at the doorstep of Dr. Fees in Santa Rosa the same morning that she murdered Dr. Tavis.
I was away from town, so I was not present on the day that Dr. Tavis was killed. She came first to my own door, and it was pretty obvious that I was her first target. I was numero uno on her list.
On July 8th, 1997, detectives obtained the physical evidence they need to move forward with charges against Theresa Ramirez.
The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of the forensic testing of her 5-shot revolver, which was in her possession the day she was found in the hotel.
Those handguns were taken to the state crime laboratory. They took the bullets from the bodies and compared them to bullets that they fired from the handgun in their laboratory, and they showed that they were actually fired from the same gun.
Coming up, prosecutors have compiled a mountain of evidence against Theresa Ramirez. But will justice prevail?
We felt that showed the foundation of an insanity defense.
She had this body dysmorphic disorder, and this was something that really drove her and was the basis of her mental illness.
On July 9th, 1997, investigator Danny Fish, the prime suspect in the murder of Dr. Michael Tavis, and attempted murder of office manager Kay Carter.
I introduced myself at her bedside, told her I was there to interview her, asked her her name, and asked her a number of questions, and she refused to answer any of them. She simply turned her head away every time I talked to her.
She pretended she couldn't talk. From her medical condition, I mean, that would be understandable, but they felt that she was able to talk. She just was choosing not to.
So I read her her Miranda rights at that point and placed her into custody by telling her she was under arrest for the murder of Dr. Tavis and the shooting injury of Kay Carter.
She was charged with first-degree murder and an attempted murder.
In January 1999, Theresa Ramirez's trial gets underway.
We're asked to testify at the trial. Me and a couple coworkers heard the first shots that struck Kay. And so we were able to set up a timeline. We could say when those shots happened. We did not hear the second shots that hit Mike Tavis. But by setting up this timeline, we were able to show the jury that she was lying in wait.
What they were able to piece together was that Kay Carter came in and turned on a computer and also started some coffee. And then Theresa Ramirez came in through the back door and shot her.
I believe she hid in one of the offices for the 15 or 20 minutes that it took Dr. Tavis and Deborah to get there. And when Dr. Tavis walked in and down the hallway to go find Kay, I think that Theresa Ramirez stepped out into the hallway behind him, said what she said, shot him in the chest. As he turned to run, I believe she started firing again and hit him in the side, and then twice in the back. And then I think she ran out the back shortly after Deborah had run to the other office.
Theresa's defense at trial was that she was criminally insane and therefore could not be held accountable for her actions.
When I spoke to her, all she would ever talk about is the problem she had with her breast surgery. That was her focus all of the time. She was, in her mind, horribly disfigured. We felt that that showed the foundation of an insanity defense.
Some of the people that evaluated Theresa Ramirez said that she had this body dysmorphic disorder, and that this was something that really drove her and was the basis of her mental illness.
Theresa's body in layers, and she covered her body pretty much. You would not see any of her skin, just her hands and forearms. Even her neck would be covered.
On February 11th, 1999, a jury finds Theresa Ramirez guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder. She is sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in prison without parole.
Theresa has a stone-faced reaction to all of this. She doesn't say anything. She just sits there and stares straight ahead.
She wasn't insane. She was just evil. Just because she wanted her breasts to look perfect.
She should spend the rest of her life behind bars. Dr. Tavis was just being a good doctor and a good person.
But the verdict is little consolation to the loved ones of Dr. Michael Tavis and Kay Carter, who passed away in 2012 due to her injuries.
Kay Carter had 4 kids, and her husband had previously died. She ruined their lives. He was married. He has kids. She ruined their lives. Nurses are nurses for a reason. We're out there to help people. And here she was, a registered nurse that was taking someone's life because of her own dissatisfaction with her body image. It was just so sad.
Dr. Tavis has always been remembered as a very well-liked, compassionate doctor who was very skilled and did excellent work. And he was taken from us way too soon. He did not deserve this. And neither did Kay.
Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shoot tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Talk